I was a Marine. I defended our embassy in Iraq.
I was in the Army. I was a combat photographer in Somalia.
We did a lot of good over there.
I saw a fellow soldier save the life of a child.
That's why I'm still serving.
And that's why I'm still serving.
These are the stories of true American heroes, of men and women who served in the U.S. Armed Forces, veterans now, still serving their fellow Americans.
I always had a desire to serve in the military since I was a little kid. The ships, the airplanes, the tanks, everything about being in the military excited me.
John Ennis, born and raised in Howell, New Jersey, John felt the call to serve our nation. Shortly after high school, John decided to answer that call by enrolling in the United States Naval Academy in 1999.
One of the things that we were taught very early as freshmen or plebes at the Naval Academy was that you're only as strong as the guy or girl next to you. You can only achieve so much as your teammates achieve, and you're only as strong as the weakest link in your chain. These messages sort of drove us to each succeed as much as we could individually, while keeping the prospect of the team at the fore of our minds and at the fore of our activities. The brotherhood and the sisterhood in the armed forces is something that I'm certain that I'll never experience again in any job I hold from here till whenever I decide to stop working, which will probably be into my 90s, hopefully.
John graduated from the Naval Academy as an ensign in 2002. Still just a kid, John became the leader of men.
Nothing can prepare you for your first real leadership experience out in the fleet. I recall being an ensign, our first officer rank, directly upon commissioning from the academy, and getting to my first ship and looking at the 20 or so sailors that I was immediately put in charge of, most of whom were almost twice my age. I remember being that scared 22-year-old kid who was all of a sudden thrust into a leadership role. And my first meeting with my division on the ship was really a sort of a moment, not only that I'll always remember, but it was something that I've really taken with me from that point, because I realized just how important my role on that ship was and how important my role to the military writ large was.
After 6 years of service, John left the Navy as a lieutenant.
Transitioning out of the military is one of the harder things for folks to do in life, because you're used to such a rigid and regimented lifestyle that covers everything from when you wake up until you go to sleep, even on the weekends. You know, I can remember Saturdays and Sundays when I wouldn't have any work to do, but I'd wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, regiment even my fun and leisure activities, because that's what I was used to doing. I found that when I transitioned into the civilian world, I was doing a corporate job for a defense contractor, Lockheed Martin, that I thoroughly enjoyed. And one of the things that I liked about it was the transition was made a little bit more easy, because I was still dealing with the US Navy and primarily international navies at that job. And so I still was able to deal with the same folks, doing a lot of the same things that I had done when I was in the Navy. So while it was difficult, I feel as if I picked a job directly out of the military that enabled that transition to be a little bit more seamless.
John continued to work at Lockheed Martin and then at IBM, and now is currently an account executive with Microsoft. Because his service in the Navy prepared him for life and success after the military, John felt it was his duty to help others who had served.
Volunteering for veterans seems not only like the logical choice for me to do as one, and knowing so many of them across my time in the military, it was something that I knew needed to be done. I think that if there are any causes out there, particularly in this country, that require and really elicit an emotional response from the American people, it's veterans care. There are no folks out there in any profession in America that answer the call more presciently, that do more for the freedoms and democracy of the United States than military servicemen and women. And we owe them the same level of care and concern that they put into their jobs to protect us, to facilitate a more easy transition when they get home, whether they're wounded or not, whether service members have been killed and it's assisting their families. There's so much that we can do for veterans, and I just wanted to be a small part of that.
When an opportunity to serve veterans arose with Luke's Wings, John was happy to help.
I had the privilege of meeting the current CEO, Fletcher Gill, through a mutual friend, actually out socially a number of years ago. And he told me about his organization, and it seemed like something that I was really excited to get involved with.
Luke's Wings was started in December of 2007, actually, at a lunch with Sarah Wingfield, a good friend of mine. And we were just having lunch and catching up, and she mentioned to me that she had visited Walter Reed about 6 months earlier in the spring of 2007. And she met the troops, and she met a wounded warrior named Luke Shirley, who had lost an arm and a leg. And we got to talking about him and about her experience, and it had really stuck with her for the entire 6 months since her experience.
One of the things that Luke's Wings wanted to stay true to from the beginning was that mission of uniting fathers and sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, with their children and with their families that they wouldn't ordinarily have a chance to see.
Luke's Wings is a very simple charity, a simple organization. We provide airplane tickets to wounded warriors and their families during recovery, and anybody who wants to help us reunite a family can do so on our website or through the mail or volunteer for the organization. We've purchased almost 1,000 airplane tickets now, and I think we're just getting started. So we just keep doing what we're doing and leave the rest to God.
There is more that we can do, and as a private citizen, I felt proud of my contributions to that effect.
Since 2008, Luke's Wings has commissioned over 900 flights of family members to the bedsides of wounded warriors. As the organization grew, so did John's involvement. He is now on the board of directors helping Luke's Wings continue to grow and serve our nation's heroes.
Most of my involvement from the beginning was principally through that written correspondence back and forth. Some of our press releases I was intimately involved in. A lot of our media outreach was something that I was fortunate enough to get involved with.
When we built Luke's Wings into something much more significant, I guess, right around 2011, he was one of the first people I thought of for our board of directors.
And for me it was very rewarding, because I knew that I was writing something that potentially may touch someone's heart. It was enabling folks to get to see their loved ones that were hurt in faraway lands. And there was no more important correspondence that I could think of to do at that time, and I still can't. And it was very rewarding for me. I wish that I could put into words the emotions that I've witnessed, the things that folks have said as a result of our assistance. It's just very difficult for me to express that. While it's easy for me to internalize, while I have seen and heard the things that folks have said, while I've felt the emotions that they have felt, I can't think when I eventually get to be a parent what it would mean to me if folks were kind enough to reunite me with my family, particularly if it was a son or daughter of mine that was wounded in action. And I can't think of anything more important to these families than getting to see their loved ones. And to be just a small part of that is very humbling, and I'm very proud.
Aside from his position with Luke's Wings, John is also an editor of the Los Angeles Times bestseller, In the Shadow of Greatness.
A number of my Naval Academy classmates from the class of 2002 and I have recently published a book entitled In the Shadow of Greatness. And all of our author profits are going towards veterans organizations.
On 9/11, I was in Bancroft Hall preparing for class, and the entire institution went into some level of unrest.
I don't think any of us really understood the impact, much less what actually was happening or who was responsible for it.
I passed someone on the way to class who said, "Did you hear that the Pentagon was hit?" And I said, "No, it wasn't the Pentagon, it was the World Trade Center." So at that point, he had his information, I had mine. It was almost like you could see the world piecing together what had happened.
Here was an event that tied us together as a generation and gave us a cause.
It hit home just because I knew someone very personally, and then I remember wanting to take action.
I came here because I've wanted to serve, whether it was in peacetime or war, and we knew at that moment that things were going to go down somewhere in the world.
9/11 was a tipping point moment. It was a time where we stood straighter, focused harder, and realized that calculus wasn't as important as navigation, and English literature wasn't as important as weapons and systems engineering. And as we went on in our senior year, that really defined us, preparing for war.
You started to see those bonds of loyalty that we had all been talking about really begin to be forged.
You learn at this place that you're probably not going to make it through on your own or all by yourself.
After 9/11, we saw that here was our opportunity. But at the same time, there were many things that we went through, that we experienced, and that we struggled to understand that were not as clear. Those shadows that we tried to distinguish where our opportunities of heroism were.
There's a lot of stories that are going to be in this book that they may not have necessarily read in the newspaper.
You get pages and pages of different people's stories imparting their experience, what they went through in order to educate the next generation to understand what leadership for us really was and what it can be in the future.
So it's a bit of an oral history. It's a celebration of the heroism of our generation. It's an inspiration to the next generation.
We hope to do well with this book. The book chronicles our experiences at the Naval Academy and talks about our unique contributions to the long war in the 10 years directly following 9/11, as we were the first class to graduate right after the 9/11 attacks. And so on the one hand, we are really trying to honor our experiences and all veterans who have served. And from a looking forward perspective, frankly, we'd like to do real well with this book so we can raise as much money as possible to go to different veterans organizations. And so we have actually set up our own 501c3 nonprofit along those lines to disperse those funds when they become available to help out as many vets as we can.
Whether it be through profits from the book or through work with Luke's Wings, John continues to serve veterans any way he can. So today, we thank John Ennis for still serving.
My time in the military was the proudest that I've had thus far in my young life. And you know, if there's a higher calling than putting on the nation's uniform, I haven't found it yet, and I don't expect to. And I think the least that we can do, the least that the American people can do, is do everything they can to help the folks who are willing to sacrifice their lives to protect their freedom. And I don't see, and I can't think of any higher cause than that one.